When Edward died, the first thing people started talking about was what I was going to do next. Not immediately. They were kind in those early weeks. They brought food and sat with me and let me talk about him as much as I needed to. But after a few months, quietly at first and then less quietly, the question began to surface. What are you going to do about the house? Are you really going to stay there alone? Have you thought about being closer to the children? And I understood where it was coming from. I did. They loved me. They were worried. A woman of my age, alone in a large home far from her family. To them, it looked like a problem that needed solving. To me, it looked like my life. And I was not ready to hand it over to anyone else's idea of what it should become. Come sit with me. My name is Victoria. I am 70 years old. I live on a private estate in England alone, and I have done so for 6 years now since Edward passed. If this is your first time here, I am glad you found me. Let me tell you what those early conversations actually looked like. My daughter Caroline was the most honest with me. She did not try to manage me or reason me into anything. She simply sat across from me one afternoon and said, "Mom, I worry about you being there on your own. I want to know you are safe, that I could work with." That was love speaking plainly, and I respected it. My son William, calling from New York, was more practical. He sent me information about properties closer to Bristol where Caroline lives. He framed it as just something to consider. I considered it for about 45 seconds. And then there was my other son, who managed to make it clear within a single conversation that he felt my staying alone was an inconvenience to him personally. That particular opinion I set aside quite quickly. My friends were a mixture of genuinely concerned and quietly envious, I think. Several of them had already moved closer to their children or into smaller homes, and I sensed that my refusal to do the same made them feel something they could not quite name. I listened to all of it, and then I stayed. I want to explain why. Because it was not stubbornness, although I am not without that quality. This house was Edward's and mine. We chose it together. We built our life here together. His roses are still in the garden. His chair is still in the sitting room. I am not sentimental about possessions as a rule, but I am honest about what places hold. And this place holds him in a way that no other place ever could. Beyond that, and perhaps more importantly, I had spent enough of my life arranging myself around other people's comfort. 3 marriages, decades of adjusting and accommodating and fitting myself into whatever shape the relationship required. I was 64 years old, and I was finally, for the first time in my adult life, completely free to live entirely as I chose, to eat when I wanted, to sleep when I wanted, to have silence when I needed it and company when I sought it, to make every single decision in my own home without negotiating it with anyone. That freedom, after the grief of losing Edward, was not something I was willing to give up. Not for practicality, not for anyone's peace of mind, not even for my own children, who I love with everything I have. I chose myself, and I would choose myself again. The first year was not what I expected. I had prepared myself for loneliness, and the loneliness did come. But it came in shapes I had not anticipated. Not the big, obvious loneliness of a quiet Sunday or an empty chair at dinner. The small, invisible kind. The moment you hear something funny and turn to tell someone who is not there. The way the house sounds different at night when there is nobody else breathing in it. The strange weight of making every decision alone, even the small, meaningless ones, with no one to say, "Does this seem right to you?" I cried more in that first year than I had expected to. Not always about Edward specifically, sometimes just about the shape of the life I was now living, so different from everything that had come before. But I also discovered things I had not expected. I discovered that I am very good company for myself. That was not something I had known before, not really, because I had rarely been given the chance to find out. I discovered that I have opinions about how a home should feel that I had never fully expressed because someone else's preferences were always part of the equation. I rearranged things. I changed things. I let certain rooms become entirely mine in a way they had never been allowed to be. I discovered that solitude and loneliness are not the same thing. Loneliness is an ache for connection. Solitude is something you can settle into, like a chair that fits you exactly, once you stop being afraid of the quiet. I want to be honest about the loneliness too, because I said I would be. There are evenings still when the quiet feels heavy rather than peaceful. When I would give a great deal for Edward to simply walk through the door and sit with me. That does not go away. I do not think it ever fully goes away, and I have stopped expecting it to. What I have found instead is that I have built a life that holds both things at once. The peace of living on my own terms, and the occasional ache of being alone. Both are real, both are allowed to exist together. This channel is part of how I manage that, if I am honest with you. Every evening I sit here and I talk to you, and it is not a small thing. It is my connection to the world beyond these walls, and I mean that genuinely. I upload every single day because this is my evening ritual, and because I am less alone because of it. And I hope, in some small way, that you are too. What I want every woman facing this decision to hear is this. The people who love you will have opinions about how you should live. Those opinions come from care, and you should receive them with the grace they deserve. And then, when you have listened carefully and considered honestly, you are allowed to make your own choice. Even if that choice makes people uncomfortable. Even if it does not look the way anyone else thinks it should look. You have spent your life being considerate of other people. You are allowed to be considerate of yourself now. Living alone is not a failure. It is not a tragedy. For many of us at this stage of life, it is the truest and most honest way of living we have ever known. It was for me. I upload every evening. If you are not yet part of this, the subscribe button is just below. I would very much like you here. Take care of yourself today. Come sit with me.